Hi, this is Kimmy. I'm going to show you how to do my short row ruffle, which I'm going to put on the bottom of a little shawlette that I'm making. It's my watermelon slice shawlette. And the reason that I chose to make this ruffle separate is because I do most of my knitting when I'm commuting, and it's just a lot easier to take a small piece with me than the whole shawl. The yarn I'm using here is from Knit Picks, and it's their Stroll Fingering in the color Pond Tonal. They have these beautiful tonal palettes that are all one color, but they vary in shades of light to dark, and I just love that. It looks just like a watermelon rind. This is really easy to do, and I'm going to show you a technique for doing short rows that I learned from the fabulous Carol Sunday, who's one of my favorite knitwear designers. She's such a clever lady. And she has actually a video showing how to do this technique on her own website, carolsundayknits.com, I think it is. And so if mine isn't clear enough, you can go look at hers, and she might clarify things for you somewhat. I have 15 stitches on my needle here. I have one circular needle that I'm using, but you can use double points or whatever, straight needles, whatever is the easiest for you. I cast on originally 15 stitches using a long tail cast on, and then I purled back. And then I started what I'm going to show you how to do now. I left a long tail on the end because you're going to do something with that at the very end when you join this to the shawl. So anyway, here we have 15 stitches. And the first thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to be knitting in a very strange and awkward manner because of the way I have to hold my hand in front of the camera. Pay no attention to my ridiculous knitting technique. But 10 stitches, first of all. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Now instead of doing a wrap and turn here, I'm just going to do a turn. And the wrapping is going to be done on the other side here. I'm using a piece of waste yarn. It's actually this DMC crochet pearl cotton. Comes in skeins. You can buy it at Joanne, Michael's. Every yarn store has it probably, and just a short piece in a contrasting color. The reason I like to use this is that it's very thin and it's slippery, so it's easy to remove. So you put your working yarn straight down and you just take a piece of your waste yarn and you lay it across in any old manner. And then you just basically forget that it's there for a while. And you're going to continue purling back to the bottom of the ruffle. Now when you do the first stitch, pull it tight just as you ordinarily would when you're purling. Again, this is very awkward for me because of the way the camera is and the limited space for my hands to hold it in front of the lens. Okay, so we've completed the first short row set, meaning knit 10, purl back 10. And before we purl back, we put in a little holder here, which we'll deal with in a minute. Okay, so we have a gap here, which we will deal with later. That was caused from turning without wrapping, without completing our wrap. Now I'm going to knit back 5 stitches this time. That's what short rows are about. You, instead of doing the whole row, you knit a short part of the row and you have consecutively shorter parts until you finally knit back all the way. So like 5 stitches. This is my second one, third one, fourth one, number 5. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm just going to turn my work and put the working yarn straight down, and I'm going to pull a piece from the same waste yarn right across the working yarn any old way. Just make sure it crosses and then just forget about it again. Purl back. keeping that first stitch tight. Okay, so we have this little waste yarn in the back, like so. Leave it a little loose there. Now we're going to fix those gaps that we have. We have two gaps now. We have one here and we have one here. We're going to close those up in a really easy way. Knit back to the first gap. 5 stitches. 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, now in the back, you're going to grab hold of your waste yarn that you have and pull on it. Just give it a little tug. You can see it forms this little loop here. So put your left needle through the little loop. It's kind of hard for me to see, but there it is, the little loop. And you're just going to remove the waste yarn. See how easily it slides out. Turn your work to the right side again, and notice that we're now going to close up that gap by knitting those 2 stitches together. And continue knitting until the next gap. My little waste yarn has flipped forward to the right side, but it's supposed to stay on the back. Push it to the back to get it out of the way. Okay, so now we have our second gap, and we're going to do the same thing as before. We're just going to tug on the waste yarn till you see the little loop. Put your left needle, the tip of the left needle, through that loop. Pull it out, remove the waste yarn for good. Now the gap is here. We're going to close that gap by knitting those 2 stitches together. Continue knitting to the top of the ruffle. Okay, so look how great that looks on the right side. It looks almost perfect on the back side, and many people would look at this and say, that is good enough. That looks pretty darn good. But being the perfectionist that I am, I'm noticing these 2 little tufts of yarn here, which are just barely visible, and I'm going to show you a way that if you desire, you can get rid of those. It's pretty darn easy. Just purl back. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I've reached the first little tuft of yarn. And if it doesn't bother you, just keep purling to the bottom of the ruffle. But here's the way you can get rid of it real easily. Slip that stitch from your left needle to the right purlwise, and then pull that little tuft of yarn up. I didn't quite get all of it. And over the left needle. Now I'm not going from back to front, I'm going from front to back with that left needle. Then put the slip stitch back onto the left needle and purl those 2 together. Continue purling toward the bottom of the ruffle till you reach the second little tuft of yarn. Do the same thing. Slip purlwise from the left needle to the right. Lift the tuft of yarn over the left needle, replace the slip stitch back onto the left needle, and purl those 2 together. Continue purling to the bottom of the ruffle. Okay. Now, oops, one of my stitches slipped off. Okay, that looks perfect. No little tufts of yarn, and it still looks just as perfect on the right side. So we've completed 6 rows actually. First we knitted up 10, back, that's 2, up 5, that's 3, back, that's 4, then an entire row, 5, and back an entire row, 6. That is the sequence that you will repeat until you get the desired length of your ruffle. My shawlette is requiring approximately 4 feet of ruffle, measuring from the joining edge, the joining upper edge. Depending on the length that you've made your shawl, yours may be more or less, but it just makes such a nice ruffle. It's one of the other reasons I did it this way is because it rolls under to the wrong side rather than to the right side, which is something that I wanted. After blocking, this is actually going to be quite a bit, wider. But it'll still roll. It's just the tendency of the stitch that it's going to roll a little bit. And I like that it rolls under. Also, this yarn, this tonal yarn, which is so pretty, comes in many different colors. It has a rather short color repeat. The color doesn't really change, but the darkness to the lightness has a short repeat. And in knitting this direction, I'm getting it to look like a watermelon rind, whereas if I had knitted it lengthwise, it would have looked quite different. So that's another reason that I chose to do it this way. And the portability as well. So try it. You'll really like this technique. There's so many different ways of doing short rows. You can do it, create this whatever way you prefer. I just happen to really love this method with the waste yarn that I learned from the fabulous Carol Sunday. Visit her website. She has really cute designs and great tips for knitting. Thanks for watching. Bye.